Hello, my name is Peter Wooding, and thank you for joining this session. Our vehicle to grid session will be facilitated, moderated, if you want to call it, by Graeme Cooper. And I'm delighted today to obviously welcome Graeme, Francisco, and Jeremy to really give their insights and thoughts on this most important topic. So if this is okay with you, Graeme, I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Yes, so Peter, thank you very much, and thank you all for tuning in to watch the discussion. Firstly, an introduction on me. My name's Graeme Cooper. I'm the Project Director of Transport Decarbonisation at National Grid. Anybody who's in the energy bit of the industry will know that National Grid is two broad businesses: the system operation piece, which manages real-time supply and demand, and the rest of National Grid, which is the pipes and wires. So I'm technology agnostic by my license, but I'm in the pipes and wires business, so we can talk about electricity, hydrogen, and everything in between. And more importantly, for the V2G space, National Grid is involved, but obviously we're one step removed from that as we run the energy networks. But I will also take my National Grid hat off at part of this discussion, because having been in the energy industry for a long time and in renewables for a long time, I've got some wider opinions, probably out with that of National Grid. So Peter's prompted me to be a little bit more bold in my points. But you can't start the discussion on V2G without the pioneer having their voice. So, Nissan has been at the front of the electric vehicle movement. For full declaration here, my route into an EV was I did the 4-day test drive in the Nissan Leaf, and that changed everything, right? So I actually have Nissan to thank for my current career. So on that basis, I am going to introduce Francisco to just take us through the Nissan view of the world. And then I think what that does is then that tees us up really nicely for Jeremy then to introduce himself and him to bring his opinions in. So on that basis, Francisco, I'm going to leave it for you to do your introduction.
Thank you, Graeme. It's a pleasure to be with all of you guys again, talking about this very exciting topic that is the electric vehicle grid integration. So I'll do my best to share some slides. Let's see if we are lucky and Teams is working. I hope it does. In the
That's
meantime,
lovely. We can see that. That's really good.
Fantastic, great. So yeah, myself quickly, for those that don't know me, I've been working in Nissan for the last 12 years, essentially working in the electric mobility since the beginning, in a number of areas like working with governments and energy companies, figure out what to do and how to generate value out of the switch from combustion engine to electric. And since the last 4 years, running the energy business for Nissan, based here in the European office in close to the Paris area. So in a nutshell, as you have seen already in many articles and people talking about the industry, and soon we're facing 4 major challenges in our sector. Each of them, with the capacity of deeply transform our business, which is a bit of a complex situation, right? Because we're not used to being in such an agitated in context in the automotive sector, right? So we like steady movements, but here is where we are. So we are in a situation where our customers are demanding really the latest technology from us, right? So you always want your iPhone 12 to be compatible with your car. You want to extract the maximum about data on connected services, and you expect your car to follow what the other guys in Silicon Valley are doing. Experience is fundamental. We are more and more used to get what we want quickly, right? So like you go to Amazon and you buy something, you want to be delivered just the day after you order, and you are interacting with other customers in social media, and you are expecting really seamless services. We put here the case of Netflix and all of these type of services that our customers are exposed today in a daily business. Is really transforming how we approach the market and how we approach the type of services we're offering to our customers. All of this in a technological context in which we are embedding sustainability in every single product we do, right? So with the switch to battery-powered electric vehicles, but also with the autonomous drive technology in with the connected services, right? So we have a product that is significantly evolving. We have customer needs that are significantly changing, and we are in an environment that is more and more digital, more and more service-oriented. So all of this is really bringing tremendous challenges for our sectors, and we need to learn how to face them and how to transform our company to face this new context. Something very similar is happening to the energy players, right? So as you know, many years ago, even depending on which country you are, you're going to see more or less the point. But the market is liberalized, so there is no more national monopolies into the electricity retail business, and clearly they're also facing the customer empowerment. So people are more and more used to take decisions and to take in their own hands. What do we buy and from when and from who, and so on, right? So they are facing that challenge where customers do not feel comfortable in just being a number that is paying a bill every month without any capability to complain or to switch or to challenge the way electricity is delivered and used in your house. Decentralization is also a fundamental change for energy companies that are used to run power plants, and now because every customer wants to feel empowered, we see more and more technical solutions that are switching this balance, from central utility managed solutions to decentralized tools that are in people's homes, right? So like you have your own solar panels, you have your own battery, you have your own electric car, likely bidirectional. So all of these are bringing more tools and more power to the end customer that they used to have in the past. And then clearly the sustainability challenges as well, like we have in the automotive sector, we also have in the energy area, particularly with more wind, more solar, and how do we stabilize the final system, taking into account all of these intermittency and all of these let's say technical challenges that a lot of wind and a lot of solar are bringing to the system. Our view is that we can have a portfolio of solutions that, depending on which country you are, you can have more or less weight of each of those solutions. But clearly, distributed generation is fundamental. So we believe that every home and every building need to be equipped with its own solar generation, with its own stationary storage. We also think that electric vehicles will take an increasing role in how to stabilize the electricity system and how to help to have more wind and more solar in the most cost-efficient manner, right? So the key issues, obviously, the first one is being smart in how you charge. Make sure that your charger has a minimum degree of intelligence that is not bringing any problem to the system. Is just somehow synchronized with the needs of the system. And the holy grail in our industry, which is the V2G, in a way that the vehicles are re-injecting back electricity in the system when it's needed and how it's needed, in order to help distribution companies, transmission companies, in order to help to reduce the cost of electricity, and in general, helping to have the net zero electricity system that we all want at the lowest possible cost. Right, so this has been our goal since 2013, when we decided that every Nissan Leaf and ENV200 will be natively bidirectional. Right, so we have been working since then in how to make it happen. In general, what you see is our vision that vehicles need to be much more than just cars. Right, so they are not just a tool or something people are using for mobility. They're also an asset that is going to help to decarbonize the electricity system. And we have been working since many years with the key players. In Europe, you see there are a few names like EDF or E.ON or Enel, but also with National Grid in the UK, we have several projects with them, try to learn from each other, what are the needs from the different markets, and try to build together a solution that is helping the consumers, because this is what is at the end is that everything we do need to help to decarbonize the system, but at the same time need to bring something valuable to people, right? So that's what we have been doing. In general, key challenges that we face every day and key questions that we get every day as well is, if your car is going to be used as a stationary battery, and what about the durability, right? So is this going to impact the life of my battery? Is I'm going to, wake up in the morning and try to go to the office and my battery is going to be empty, right? So how is the electricity grid going to manage all of these things? What is the value that you can generate? I'm going to take any portion of this value. I'm going to make any money with it, right? So many questions that need to be answered. And by putting in the field products and in the hands of private customers, in the hands of corporate clients, we're trying to learn and see for every type of customer, how can we extract the maximum amount of value from the system and bring the maximum amount of value to the electricity players. And in general, just my last slide, just to show you a little bit of a history of what we have been doing. So we started back in 2011. My goodness, almost 10 years ago, with the very basic vehicle-to-home concept in Japan. We have been evolving that product, try to make it more compact, cheaper, and try to make some countries evolve their regulatory framework so they allow the grid injection from cars, which is a key challenge, right? So in terms of grid code certification, in terms of compatibility with frequency markets, and compatibility with distribution services, little by little, we have been making the technology evolve towards what we need to have in terms of weight, dimension, cost, performance. And we're getting now into a point where the products are really close to what it is required for a mass market, right? So that's why you've seen some of the projects we have been doing with E.ON and OVO and EDF, because we're really close to the market explosion that we all want in that sense. In general, the key message from my side is the challenges we have in front of us are so big that not a single company can face them alone, right? So it's very important that we join forces between all the players in mobility, in energy, in digital, and governments. The only way we can find the best possible solution for this is by working together and putting the social value generation in front and very high, say, in our priorities to make the world a better place.
Francisco, that's fantastic, and I couldn't agree with you more. So obviously you're coming from the automotive sector and all of that knowledge. I'm coming from the energy sector and our knowledge, and the one thing we've said all along is the transition is this managed transition is so huge. Actually, you're bringing three industries together: energy, transport, and digital. And you've absolutely picked that up, which is fantastic. What I'm going to do now for the benefit of time is Jeremy, do you want to introduce to the audience yourself, your organization, and your lens across this? And then I'll chuck in some thoughts and ideas that may stimulate a bit of debate afterwards. So Jeremy, over to you.
Certainly. Thank you, Graeme. So my name is Jeremy Parks, and my role at DNVGL is Global Business Lead for Electric Vehicles. DNVGL is a firm that are involved in independent advice for the energy sector, as well as a number of other sectors around the world. And so we have been supporting customers looking at the electric vehicle revolution that is occurring, looking at the impact that there is to the grid, looking at the impact there is to manufacturers, and integrating that transition, integrating those electric vehicles into the power systems, both today and in the future. So for us as a independent advisory firm, one of the areas that we certainly believe in is the role that electric vehicles will play in that energy transition, and that stems, of course, from the electrification of transport, reducing the energy that is required for that transport, making use of the hugely huge efficiency gains that there are, but also the role that they can play in aiding the integration of variable renewables that will be coming onto the system over the coming decades, and the vehicle to grid services that can be provided by those electric vehicles are a key aspect of ensuring that that transition can occur as efficiently and as effectively as possible. So those are the areas that we get involved in, and for us, certainly we see there's huge potential from some of the modelling that we have done out into the future decades. We see that storage capacity available from electric vehicles globally will start to ramp up over certainly over this decade, to the point that in our projections we believe that the storage available from vehicles will be greater than pumped hydro by the end of the decade. So by 2030 that'll be the case, and then it will continue ramping up through the decades as that technology becomes more and more readily available. So yeah, huge potential. Probably some thoughts about some of the aspects that will need to be addressed to make the most of that potential. But those are some of my initial views, Graeme.
Fantastic, Jeremy. Thank you. And actually, what's nice is I think there's a lot of tribalism in the energy disruption space, and it's great that we can have nice, frank, and open discussion. So I was going to bring just a few thoughts, to my mind, and then that maybe stimulate some discussion, and then we'll also try and pick up some questions from the audience as well. I guess there's a couple of things from my perspective. When I talk to people in the automotive sector outside of Nissan, the car OEMs are deeply bothered by V2G. They're telling me that it adds complexity, it adds weight, it adds risk, and actually they want the battery out of the car at the end of its useful life for a second life. So that's one aspect. The next one is, I know from an energy modelling exercise, just managed charging, so avoiding peak and dumping sort of spare energy into batteries, so that just managing the charge from a modelling perspective probably gets us to about 80% penetration of EVs. The other one is a people thing. So one of the things for me is, before owning an EV, because I have a driveway, I thought I'd plug it in every day. The cold reality is I only plug it in and charge it once a week. So if it's not plugged in, it's not visible, usable. I also think there's that piece around human behaviour. My favourite stat is every day in the UK, 2,100 people just run out of petrol or diesel. Now, we've had a lifetime of having a needle and a light and refueling, but our biggest risk here is human behaviour. The other one that I also sit around with is I contributed to the last future energy scenarios discussion. And one of the things we debated very, very openly at the time was we use V2G as shorthand, but the battery and the flexibility associated doesn't necessarily need to be on full rubber tyres. So a couple of things here is that if we completely agree that there's a symbiotic relationship with the decarbonisation of transport and the growth in renewables and decarbonising the energy system. So that flexibility, I think, is a given. There is definitely a piece in that democratisation of energy, be in control of and participate if you want. One of the challenges, though, is we're seeing huge levels of battery storage going in at transmission level. You just have to look at National Grid website to see who's connecting. We see a huge number of battery storage interest at distribution level. And we see a lot of people offering energy storage at home. So one of the things that occurs to me is, if we can get away from sort of, I guess the debate seems to be overtly focused on V2G as some sort of panacea, and take one step back, I'm more convinced that storage everywhere, flexibility everywhere, is going to be really key. But also taking our blinkers off just away from transport for a moment, and I know this is transport, but I decarbonise my home heating system, so I have ground source heat pumps. My energy consumption at home for heat is almost 8 times the consumption of energy for transport. So actually, having the flexibility around electrification of heating could have greater value, particularly when my battery at the moment is the water storage tank. Water storage tank, 300 quid. Equivalent energy storage in battery terms, probably many thousands. So I think one of the things that I think here is there is definitely something about that flexibility, but being broader perhaps than just assuming that V2G is just on 4 tyres. So I feel like I've kind of thrown in the hand grenade into the middle. I don't actually disagree with either the points you made, Jeremy, or the points you've made, Francisco. But I think what is often missing is people get the concept of V2G. It's great. I understand it as a concept. They hook onto that simplicity, but often miss the broader real estate, the broader energy opportunity in that space. And that's really kind of what I wanted to throw into the mix. So happy for you to shoot me down or throw me under the bus. But let's open that up. So if you've got anything to add, feel free, and then we'll pick up some questions from the audience. Anybody want to pile in, Jeremy? Francisco?
Yeah, well, I suppose just briefly on that point of an energy system that requires flexibility, and that flexibility coming from different areas, particularly the power system. We would certainly agree at DNVGL from a grid modelling perspective. The power systems of the future will both need variable generation that performs part of that flexibility, variable demand and reaction of that demand to cope with the variability that there will be, along with the storage, of course, providing part of that flexibility in the demand side, and the interconnection between different systems and broader grid interconnection to spread some of that variability over a much broader geographical area. So, you know, when the wind is blowing in the North Sea, but perhaps not blowing quite so hard in Spain, that there's routes for the electrons to make it to where they need to get to. So definitely agree with that broader flexibility that's needed. I suppose, again, to draw on some of the work that we've done on the modelling side of things, we have certainly aimed to account for at an economical model perspective, economics modelling perspective, the different options that there may be, and how they may play over the future. And of course, you know, home storage and utility scale grid connected storage plays a significant role. But because of the fact that if you've got a battery in your car, you can potentially use it for other uses, as well as moving you around and getting you where you need to go, because of the fact that a lot of the time vehicles are certainly currently and are not necessarily moving. They're, you know, only needing to make those journeys for maybe 10% of the day potentially. There's a lot of opportunity, and therefore from a kind of a high level economics perspective, the vehicle to grid solution, certainly we see it as playing a very significant role, you know, as big as grid connected utility scale storage, and indeed overtaking it in future decades as the technology moves on. So that, yeah, those are some of our thoughts on the topics you raised.
So one of the things that I found really interesting is I had a debate with one of the oil majors around this, and they actually have a team of social scientists. And what we actually got into was economics can give you an answer, engineering can give you an answer, but people won't switch. I mean, statistically, people don't switch energy supply to save 200 quid. So in the UK, so you know, sticky customers. So what you actually find is the engineering gets you there, the economics may get you there, but we don't always make economic and rational decisions. You know, some people just switch off metaphorically. And I guess that's the one for me that I think is a great area for further exploration, is just because it's possible and makes economic rational sense, will people do it? And I think that's a really untapped area. And I'd love to know, you know, if in future modelling, you know, it will broaden into that social aspect. Now, I know that's not your business focus, but I think it could add a really interesting, rich seam to this, because people are strange folks, right? We don't all follow some sort of rule book.
Well, perhaps I'll just briefly come back on that point, and then Francisco, it'd be great to hear your views on.
Yeah, absolutely.
How some of your customers drive. Sorry, just briefly on that one. there's a number of surveys that we've conducted in North America, in fact, working with the utilities over there, looking at variable tariffs and how drivers shift and change their behavior depending on these tariffs. And the outcome of certainly 3 or 4 of those studies were really, really positive, in the sense that people did and do shift and change their behavior, even if it is, as you say, Graeme, perhaps only just a few $100s or a few €100, as the case may be, to try and make those savings, and in that case charge at different times rather than provide services back to the grid. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it behaves, but I'd be hopeful that people would shift.
So with Francisco, with more experience than anybody else in the room, right? Because you've been living and breathing this for a while. Really, really love to take your view on all of those. But also, can I flag there's a couple of Nissan related questions on the chat. So whilst you're responding, there are a couple of people who are interested in are you offering V2G boxes for private customers, and what sort of cost are they? So maybe if you give us your
Sure. I think at the end, the offer of V2G is going to be bundled with a number of other services, right? So I don't think people are going to go to our dealers and just buy a charger and operate the charger by themselves with an app like you do with a smart charging today, right? So the value capture on V2G is very, very complex, and you need an energy player behind, potentially or ideally a retailer. Right, so if you are an EDF customer, an E.ON customer, an OVO customer, or a Centrica customer, this retailer probably need to be the one optimizing what your flexibility is doing at every given moment of time. So I doubt the end customer is going to pay for what actually the hardware cost is. Right. So here, for example, we launched a couple of years ago a large pilot test with OVO for private customers in the UK, I think, where the customers were getting the charger free of charge. And we're just observing how they behave. We are looking what the expectations are on the charger and on the vehicle and so on. And we've got very, very interesting results. We have about 300 private customers that have been operating in this V2G environment for the past year and a half. We got, for example, about, if my memory is correct, so we're 93% of the customers that are charging the vehicle every day. So 93% of customers, go home, plug it immediately, right? So this is very good, because this is how do we monetize the value, and then in terms of the benefits, so they get, if my memory is correct, between 30 to 50 pounds discount per month in their electricity bill, because of the value that is generated with V2G, right? So in general, what I see going forward is that you're going to get an offer from your electricity retailer and your car supplier somehow connected, right? So it's Nissan with somebody else are offering you a special offer. You might have to pay something, upfront, or it's maybe bundled with your car. So there are ways of presenting the offer at the end that will have both things combined. Right. So in general, the difficulty, you say, Graeme, is how to build something that is attractive for people. Right, so it's getting your customer, the wife, oh, that's great. So I'm helping my country national grid, while at the same time decarbonizing, and it's not costing me so much. So I have a return of investment that is in 3 years, 4 years, is making people comfortable with investment.
So that's fantastic, Francisco. One of my observations actually is in a past life, I built mobile phone networks. And I'm convinced that there is going to be that bundling is going to be critical, right? So the bundling of the cost of the vehicle, the energy, everything in one thing in this sort of model is going to be critical. Because in talking to some of the big lease providers, I think 81% of vehicle purchases are financed in some way, which means finances have a role to play. And 51% of new car sales in the UK are company purchases. So actually, it could end up being that it is just a bundled service whereby it's all wrapped into the monthly lease of the car, and actually the participants, the driver, this is all removed from them. It is all just managed somewhere else. They see a reduction in their monthly lease, or they receive other benefits, but they do that in a way. I mean, this is where I think this is really exciting. There is the potential for huge business model innovation, huge market change, the way grid networks respond, the way energy markets respond. I mean, it is opening up fantastic opportunities, and that's why I'm a firm believer in trialing by doing. Learn from that experience. And it'll be really interesting, Francisco, to see those early adopters who are piloting, doing this great study with OVO and yourselves, plugging in every day. But that's because they're a very early adopter. It'll be interesting to see, and they're obviously engaged and understand what's going on. One of the interesting things for me is as this scales to Mr. and Mrs. Joe Smith average, who just care that the car's blue and has 4 seats. How will that transmit across? I mean, I think that's going to be a really interesting one, and that's part of that social learning experiment as much as it is economics and engineering.
Exactly. I think the fact that you get a value, you get cash in your pocket every month, that somehow in people's minds is linked to for how many hours do I plug my car. So, if I want to have my £30 at the end of the month, my reflex is, go home, plug it, go home, plug it, go home, plug it, and then somebody else is going to optimize. My car is going to be full in the morning. I know, that my electricity retailer, I trust what these guys are doing. My car company supplier is telling me that nothing's going to happen with the battery. Everything is warranty. I just need to plug it, and I get my rewards every month.
And interestingly, one of the, and this may be something you might want to come in on, Jeremy. Everybody thinks about the energy component. So V2G all around the movement of energy, the actual energy component of the transaction. One of the interesting things from my perspective is how does it refer to sort of networks and network services? How does it avoid upgrades or defer upgrades in grid infrastructure? Historically, we've built grids to a modeled system peak plus headroom. Now, actually, in the future, we could be building networks to smart, a smart, good average, based on the flexibility. Jeremy, I didn't know whether, through the works and study you've done, on the sort of the value of flexibility. Yes, energy component is a really massive component, but have you any commentary around sort of the value of avoided cost or deferred cost in and around infrastructure? Is that something you could pick up on?
Yes, I suppose in more general terms, that's absolutely what we're seeing. There's a number of projects that we're involved in, both in Europe and North America. Right now where the non-wires alternative, that scenario where the mitigating solution to the bottleneck that there may be in the grid locally somewhere is not necessarily upgrade of the nearby substation. It's not necessarily looking further down the network to see what changes could be made to the grid, but it is a local solution to avoid those wires, to do the non-wire solution, often as you say, with storage and perhaps some flexibility on the demand side that could be part of that solution. So yes, we're definitely seeing that in terms of sort of the specific economic value. It's obviously very site specific in those particular cases, but more broadly, we absolutely see that as part of the future power system, and indeed the future power systems will continue to become more digitized and smarter, and therefore operating potentially closer to their thermal limits in terms of the cables themselves, and so therefore if you can do that, if you can operate that whole system in a smarter way, then the services that vehicles are able to provide back to that grid become an integral part of the overall system and solution. And certainly similar sort of numbers, albeit admittedly more theoretical studies that we've done, but similar numbers to the ones that you were quoting, Francisco, in terms of the value to the end consumer. The work that we were doing in Germany was looking at around between 800 and 1,000 euros per year in terms of value to the owner of the providing those vehicle to grid services. So yeah, that's definitely something that we see a lot of value in. Forgive me, I'm going to run and grab a cable. I've just got a message popping up that my laptop is running low. So I'm still listening in on the discussion, but I'm going to grab a cable.
So I love the fact, Jeremy, that in a non-vehicle world you're having range anxiety. Okay, I think that's great. I mean, range anxiety in a whole new way. I'm interested, bearing in mind there are a lot of people participating online. Do feel free to fire in questions. Right, you've got the three of us online. Feel free to challenge us, be difficult, be provocative. And Peter, do you want to? I see you've got your hand raised. Do you want to join in? Hang on, we need the microphone on.
Yeah. Do we ever see a situation where the energy provider actually provides the vehicle as well? Because more and more people are leasing. Yeah, there are major incentives. We all pay an energy provider. If the energy provider offered the vehicle options, which is then calculated with the appropriate discounts of the ability to push back if they want or whatever, is that going to come, do you think?
So I'd love to get a view from the others. I'll give you my 2 minutes, Peter. That's a really, really good question. As an observer, as an interested participant, I was really interested to see the likes of Octopus, who are doing some clever stuff on tariffs, but they're now offering to provide cars. Right, so that shows there's a real push in that area. Others are providing that sort of bundling. I think it occurs to me that for me really is going to be the really big sort of learning from EVs, from the mobile phone industry. Pay a monthly cost and get everything wrapped into one. I think could be particularly the sort of the business model we move to. I think it could also move to things like decarbonising heat as well. Nobody cares about boilers and radiators. Only when it doesn't work do you worry about it. So actually, you could apply that sort of transport as a service in its broadest sense to that, Peter, perhaps. I mean, Jeremy, if you got any views, do pile in.
Well, yes, certainly on that particular point, there's organisations that are definitely doing that right now. So you can go to some energy companies in the UK and get your vehicle and energy supply as well, and start participating certainly in smart charging of that vehicle, and in some cases, as Francisco was talking about, trials for vehicle to grid as well. One of the thoughts that I had that would add and build on to that I think the other revolution in the transport and obviously particularly road transport sector that Francisco was mentioning is that of autonomous vehicles, and for us, although that is not our area of expertise, we do see the connection with vehicle to grid and the role that those electric vehicles can play being enhanced by a shift towards autonomous vehicles. So then sort of bringing those together, the scenario of whether your vehicle is supplied by your energy company or in fact we shift to a world where there's much more limited private ownership of vehicles, and there's huge swathes of fleets of vehicles out there that will just come and pick you up when you need it. But importantly, then you're looking at those assets and trying to maximise the value that you can get out of those assets in any which way that you can. So if you, rather than the behaviour of individuals deciding, whether they'll plug in or not, and whether they'll participate in vehicle to grid services, you have all the shared transport providers, these fleet operators who want to sweat that asset as much as possible, and therefore they'll, whenever they are not roaming around and picking people up, then they'll want to get the most out of those, and one potential route to doing that is providing services back to the grid. So I think either energy companies providing that car as a licensed vehicle, or in time the autonomous vehicles that are roaming around, and you're paying for your transport in a different way. But in both cases, there being options for vehicle-to-grid services to be part of getting the most from that asset.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's really good. I appreciate your input on that. It's really good. I mean, the one thing I think is really the strange thing for me, being an energy guy talking to people in the automotive sector. And of course, OEMs have built a product to sell, and then it's up to the buyer to work out the fueling process, right? That's how it's worked for a long time. And I guess, we've sort of seen Nissan and Tesla sort of pioneering this, realizing it's an energy play. It's the vehicle and the energy as a rat is part of that. I mean, I'm conscious that we've lost Francisco, so maybe he may dive back in when his connection returns. So I can't quite answer Gerion Muller's question yet till Nissan come back, but it is there. One of the things I was going to ask is could we see, bearing in mind the global car OEM market is a little bit upset at the moment because of current economic challenges due to Corona. Could we end up in a strange situation where an energy company could buy a car OEM, or maybe a car OEM will buy an energy company? At the moment, we have energy, transport, and digital. At what point will we see a convergence, or will it be a third party who will buy those components and push them together?
Interesting thoughts. I think we're certainly, as is being highlighted, seeing a lot of the energy industry and the automotive or transport industry coming closer together and involved with a range of the companies that as those industries join. One of the other things that has been interesting to spot in the market is the likes of Volkswagen getting involved in energy supply, and their subsidiary that is branched out into that. So I agree with you that certainly they'll come closer together. I don't know how that might pan out in terms of who will acquire who and as they progress, but certainly there's lots of change going on as the sectors come closer together.
Certainly. So I'm going to just leap across to a couple of questions raised by those in the audience. So firstly, Duncan Hellas, thank you very much for your question. So the question is, what does the panel think about the fractional utilization of the car battery, e.g., home, workplace, etc.? Now, I think from my perspective, there are a number of stats around the number of people who have the ability to charge at home. I'm conscious that in the audience we have people who are providing lamppost and street-based charging. I know I've just been charging outside my office here at work. So I'm not entirely sure that how much of that will be V2G everywhere, or V2G just in your home, or V2G just in your fleet. National Grid obviously has a vehicle fleet. We'll think about it from a vehicle fleet perspective. But I don't know, Jeremy, if you've got any response to Duncan's question.
Yeah, I suppose the first point about the fractional utilization, or my understanding of that question would be that in many journeys you would only need to use a fraction of the battery in order to get to where you need to go, and therefore there should be a reasonable percentage of that battery being available for other services such as vehicle to grid, which I think is part of the attractiveness of this this concept and the solution that's being put forward. And then I think the other one is obviously, as you're highlighting, Graeme, when will it actually be available? Will it be plugged in? And although you might have 80% of your battery still left or 50% still left, will it be plugged in and be plugged into a V2G charger? So I think that's a big unknown. We've got some estimates in our modelling of something like 10% of vehicles in the future decades being available at any given time. And if that is the case, then those are the kind of scenarios where you end up with what have we got, like something of the order of 2.5 petawatt hours per year of storage available in 2050 from electric vehicles, which is much larger than pumped hydro is at the moment. So
yeah. Certainly. I'm going to take sort of chairman's prerogative. The question, if Francisco was on the line, I was really interested to ask, hoping you may come back, is that at the moment, the only bi-directional charging technology is CHAdeMO. Now, at the moment, if you look across Europe, broadly, the technology is definitely moving to CCS as a standard. Even Nissan's brand new people carrier, sort of soft roader, their latest new car, doesn't have CHAdeMO on it. So I'm conscious that at the moment there's a strange sort of mixed message as an energy guy, seeing that the technology choice, I'm assuming that with time there are lots of people working on making CCS bi-directional, but at the moment the bi-directional technology looks to be diminishing in this period before it then expands in the future. I mean, I didn't know. I mean, obviously we don't have Nissan on the call to be able to respond to that. But I mean, have you got any views, Jeremy, on sort of standards that might either help or not help here?
Well, yes, I suppose just briefly commenting on some of the communication protocols with the chargers. We are involved as an organisation that gets involved in certification of certain technologies. We are involved in certification of the OCPP protocol, which I know is sort of future-proof for that bi-directional flow of energy. So that's in there, and we have been involved in some projects, some of these V2G trials with different charger suppliers, so street charger suppliers and different vehicle manufacturers. So I think there's a number of them certainly looking at it, and different options for how that bi-directional flow can be provided. But yes, more of that would need to happen, and costs coming down to have it more widespread.
Certainly. I guess the other thing that was, I guess it's a shame that we don't have Nissan on the line. I wanted to take the opportunity to take one step away. There was a bit of detail in the press this week around a modification to allow DNOs to throttle back charging or throttle back consumption if there was at times of peak demand. And that was really interesting because through social media, I had a whole plethora of responses. There was those from a networks perspective saying, well, we need to protect the networks and we need to allow people not to be in the dark. Then I was challenged by a couple of car charge point providers saying, leave it to us, don't demonize the car, the flexibility has to be elsewhere, don't demonize, the new thing that's coming is the car. And then had some very progressive energy retailers saying, no, the energy supply industry is going to be the bit that's doing all the flexibility. You don't need to meddle grid people. And actually, I find myself sort of firmly in the middle, because I think the move to EVs and the need for V2G or flexibility is growing because we're having this technology step, but it's one of many. I think we need huge flexibility to extract the value and to be flexible. That's more an energy provider space and to provide those services. But I'd also agree there is still a requirement that at the moment, the only final check in an energy system is a fuse at the end of the street. So I'm sort of in the position that the right control and the right communication and the right responsibility sits at all of those places, not in one place. So I think I sit in a spot which is the flexibility is probably needed in the vehicle, the energy retailer, and that sort of control. But it is always better that if all of the market opportunities don't deliver, that there's a final check that avoids people sitting in the dark. Because wouldn't it be foolish if we said markets can fix everything? That doesn't help people who sit in the dark because somebody didn't take an action for, So I didn't know, Jeremy, whether you've got any views. It certainly drove a lot of interest in the social media in the last week because Auto Express did a huge thing that's just said, well, the whole energy market's ruined, it won't work. So I'd love to know your thoughts, because I think that's critical to how we make steps towards this space.
Well, just briefly to comment on that, Graeme, I think largely I'm probably in a similar camp to you, sitting somewhere in the middle, and from a number of the distribution network operators that I've spoken to, I think they certainly don't ever want to be a block to the transition to electric vehicles, but they had some concerns over making sure the right protections were in place, as you say. But I would suspect that aggregators, energy suppliers, and the algorithms that will be put in place in order to charge both smartly and vehicle-to-grid services will be the main route and work in the vast majority of cases.
Yeah, absolutely. I think actually it's quite nice. I think it doesn't really matter where you sit in the value chain. The ability to have some reasoned debate here. I'm acutely aware that I'm a firm believer that markets should fix everything, but that's a bit of a mute debate if someone sat in the dark for 2 hours waiting for an engineer to put a new fuse in. So that was, I think it is the right players taking the right action in the right piece in the value chain. I think it's when there's a blurring of the lines, people get quite tense. Don't forget it's energy. I mean, one of the things that often comes from the automotive sector is people assume that grid networks make the energy, move the energy, sell the energy. No, the networks are just the conduit from where it's made to where it's consumed. And so we need to be able to protect the bit that we can protect. We'll let others, who are the providers, the retailers, the aggregators, as you say, do the clever stuff to work around that. We should all be working to each other's benefit, not each other's disadvantage. So I'm acutely aware that we are on the run down to the end of this session. And I don't want to steal Peter's thunder. It is Peter's gig. So I am going to Peter. I'm going to throw it over to you to sort of sum up and wrap up. But also, you've also got the final opportunity to ask your killer question if you've got one, or something that's pricked your interest in the last period in our discussion. So on that basis, Peter, thank you very much for allowing us to talk. Jeremy, thank you for participating, and Francisco is not actually able to be with us, but thank you. And Peter, I shall hand back over to you.
Thank you, Graeme. Absolutely, and thank you, Jeremy. And in the distance, Francisco, really, really interesting. And I do believe that sort of whilst we've actually gone over time, we could have kept going and going. So that's super. The whole vehicle to grid aspect sort of I find ultra interesting. But how will that work when we hopefully ultimately have a road network where you can drive as you go along? Because to me, if that's the goal, especially from a fleet perspective, then surely there would be times during peak times even where people are using the vehicle, if they have plenty of capacity in it, to be pushing to when the grid is most likely to need it, because it's automatically coming from the road. Or am I coming a little bit close on something that's going to take quite a long time to get there?
So one of the things I'm really interested in, Peter, is I love the fact that we can have the discussion. So somebody challenged me this on the other day. At the moment, we're unlikely to see, and again, Jeremy, shoot me down if you think I'm wrong, the inductive charging works best at the moment stationary. So, drive car home to a charge, to where you park the car, pull over it, no need to plug in, you just sit over it. Renault have been doing some stuff, and again, Francesco in their wider piece might have been able to, they've been testing some inductive charging. One of the things they struggle with is the ability to get enough volume of energy at the speed the vehicle is moving into the vehicle. So it's about energy density in that transition. So I think there's an interesting space here where actually as batteries get larger, lighter, cheaper, will you need to do it on the road? I think we need to be open to all of these technologies. The other point around your comment about when we're driving, when grid might want it back. One of the things that was a really interesting one is one of the transport geeks said to me the other day, at the point at when energy market needs the power back, so that sort of 5:30 to 7:30 on a cold, wet evening is actually when most cars are on the road. So the time at which you need it, more cars are actually on the road consuming that energy rather than being able to give it back. Now, I know of the park of cars, many will be at home and charging. So there are two things there, one about inductive charging, one about the time of getting energy out. But Jeremy, have you got any final comments on that?
It was certainly on the induction charging topic. It's an area that we've been involved in with a couple of customers to kind of assess the performance of the induction chargers and the safety measures of them. But all of the work that we've done to date has been focused on static chargers. So I think from a broader infrastructure perspective, we would see it as pretty unlikely that would be a route to. It's very costly to install it down a lot of the major highways, and so therefore the beauty that you have, I suppose, with electric vehicles is that they can recharge when they're not being used, whereas normally you would never do that with a petrol or diesel car. You drive it to wherever, you fill it up, and you carry on driving. So you can plug a car in just sitting there whilst it's not being used. So we wouldn't see that as a technology that we believe is likely to progress too significantly in terms of en route charging on a motorway. But induction charging, yes, definitely, particularly I suppose as we potentially transition also to autonomous vehicles as a trend that would likely increase.
Well, so I got one, Peter. We got one last final question in, which I think is just worthwhile. The question is, how will National Grid accept a fragment of energy from pockets of distribution network? Do you expect a bigger role for aggregators and to forecast ahead to feed in from V to G when the grid needs it? Firstly, the bit of National Grid I represent is the pipes and wires, not system operation. But the one thing I would say is there are a great lot of really, really clever people in the National Grid ESO who are open to engaging with everybody who can offer flexibility services. They are trying to work out how to run the grid reliably with 100% renewables, and therefore all options are on the table. So I think, Aaron, they would absolutely welcome your engagement, but I can't put words in the mouth of the guys in the ESO. They are a separate legal entity, but I know that they're very open to having those sort of discussions. So sorry, Peter, I wanted to ask and answer that question before we wrap up. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you all. I'll say both, but all, and really appreciated what you've done today. So on that, thank you very much, and we'll hopefully meet again, even though it's getting more and more virtual than it used to be. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Bye.